Almost from the moment video games were invented, developers have been looking for ways to turn them into teaching tools. As a kid, I remember sharpening my teeth on games like Number Munchers, Oregon Trail, and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And we've seen Big Brain Academy and even Rocksmith target a whole new generation of learners in recent years. The newest stab at the edutainment genre is S.U.M, Slay Uncool Monsters, a math game dressed up as a retro-themed role-playing game. We hack and slash tons of pixel monsters by adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying our way through dozens of challenging dungeons. And while it may not be the next Final Fantasy, let me tell you, this brand new game from Doomster Entertainment beats the hell out of playing Donkey Kong Jr. math. Alright, so the first thing you need to know about me is that math is not what I would call one of my strong suits. That's not to say that I can't add or subtract, I obviously have the basics down. But if we're in a situation where a bomb is about to go off and somebody needs to quickly bust through a whole bunch of math questions, then you may just need to look elsewhere. I'm the guy who's gonna write the article about the explosion afterwards. S.U.M seems to be made with people like me in mind. This is an adventure game where our unnamed hero travels throughout the land taking on monsters and giant insects. What sets this game apart is that the traditional turn-based combat has been replaced by a series of math problems. We'll need to choose two numbers from a 4x5 grid that add up to 8 or 15 or whatever the number is that's displayed on the screen. If we get the answer right, we'll slay the monster and move deeper into the dungeon. But watch out, because we only have a few seconds to create the proper math equation before the enemy will attack our adventurer. Take too much damage, and you'll get kicked out of the level and forced to rest at the nearest tavern. Now, one of the reasons why this approach works so well is because there is often more than one right answer. You can obviously add up to the number 12 in a number of different ways, like 6 plus 6, or 7 plus 5, or 8 plus 4, and so on and so forth. But what makes this tricky is that you don't always have the number that you're looking for on the board. You might immediately think of 6 plus 6, but then you realize that you've already used up all the 6s. This means that you need to solve it a different way and find two different numbers, all while the monster patiently waits to strike. Between the time and the tiles, coming up with a simple math equation can be surprisingly stressful. And that's just when you're dealing with addition problems. It won't take long for our adventurer to make his way into the wild world of subtraction, division, and even multiplication. Some dungeons will mix things up by throwing addition and division back to back, while others will ratchet up the difficulty by having you create math equations using 3 or 4 numbers at a time. By constantly making the dungeons longer and more challenging, the game ultimately forces the player to get better at memorizing answers and faster at punching them in. This is certainly fun and engaging, but I couldn't shake that feeling that I was just taking a really long and elaborate math test. I could see S.U.M being a great teaching tool for school-age kids learning their times tables. However, as a role-playing game, the balance is all off. There aren't magic spells or items or the strategy elements that you normally associate with the genre, so all you end up doing is creating math equations. No matter how many numbers they add or how they shake up the questions, the real problem is that every dungeon ends up being exactly the same. There's no way to keep the combat fresh because the combat is barely an afterthought. As a result, the RPG trappings end up feeling like nothing more than wallpaper. Now, beyond the repetition, I also have issues with the way the extra characters are unlocked. Although we're only able to select the generic adventurer at the start, the game promises us that we're going to be able to play as the archer, healer, and rogue by working our way through the single-player story. There's just one problem. Those new characters join the adventure at experience level 1. Where my trusty adventurer had nearly 400 hit points, the archer had 15. This means that the player will need to play through the dungeons all over again just to pick up where the adventurer left off. And considering that it took hours just to get to that point, I can't imagine anybody wanting to grind the levels for no reason. There's just absolutely no incentive to choose the other characters, and it's a real shame the game doesn't let us cycle between them from the start. Unfortunately, some falls into the edutainment trap of wanting to educate at the expense of the gameplay. I mean, the potential is there for a fun, math-themed role-playing game full of magic, spells, item shops, and actual story elements. But Slay, Uncool Monsters ignores all that in favor of just giving you another math test. And if I'm being honest, I don't want to take another math test. S.U.M, Slay Uncool Monsters, is a throwback adventure game that mixes math with role-playing elements. If what you're looking for is a fun and unique way to help kids improve their skills at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, then you'll likely come away impressed with this inexpensive Switch game. However, those hoping for a proper adventure will come away thoroughly disappointed at the game's shallow combat, generic characters, and non-existent story. Yeah, S.U.M is just the latest game to not be able to break through that edutainment ceiling. Hey, thanks for watching our review. It's the first one of the new year. We're back! Anyway, if you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite educational game? I'll let you bend the definition of educational as you see fit. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we have so many reviews to get to. Just review on review on review on review. Yeah, we have a lot of 2020 cleanup to do, but I wanted to start the year off with something from 2021. Mixed in with the new reviews will be a video where I go over this year's goal. We have a lot of new shows to introduce, new magazines to cover, new EGM stats to go over, new games to review. Yeah, we just have so much to get to this year. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,